on getting jobs that they were excluded from. And of course there was a lot of advice and counsel and information and books and all that to women. And what I was finding was that almost all of it was 100% wrong. It was not telling them anything they should be doing, and mostly advising them to do all the things that were going to get them axed out of the workplace in no short order at all. So I decided then that I had to write a book that would finally tell women the truth about what the workforce is really like.
How did you know the truth when so many of us didn't get the word? You know, we didn't know what the truth really is or how things really work.
Well, because I was working in the corporate world. I was a professional, lifelong career woman, and I had been doing what now women were trying to do all my life. I mean, I had intended to be a professional, career-oriented businesswoman when I was way back in high school and college. And the mere fact that it wasn't all that popular, but there were still millions of women out there. Anybody who thinks it's a big phenomenon, it just didn't work, because there were always loads of women trying to, as we used to say, make it in the man's world, right?
Right.
Yes.
Well, how did you decide what elements to include in this book on games your mother never taught you?
Well, I taught a course at a school. Actually, it was an alternative school called the Woman's School, which has just in the last couple of years ceased existence. But, and I taught, that's exactly the course I taught, corporate politics for women, really. However, I began to realize that corporate politics was a turn-off word. No woman ever wanted to hear that word, because I don't want to play politics. I just want to sit and do my job. To this day, it is true, women absolutely resist the idea that they are in a political situation, that they are playing a game.
How did you decide which rules you should include, and how did you know which things we didn't know?
I didn't know what women, well, I sort of knew the mistakes women were making, right? And what they were doing wrong, but all I did was put in all the rules that I had learned from all the men for those 25 years, or had observed in operation.
Well, you talk about the experience of women, and, well, growing up, little girls and little boys are treated differently. They have different experiences, like team sports. Okay, now that's changing, but what's the reason? Why should women know team sports? Why is that important in the business area?
Well, all you have to do today is read any newspaper, magazine, go to work, any place, no matter where you go. If you do not hear the word team, every other word, this is welcome to the team, I mean, this is a team project, we're, you know, creating a lean team. That's how big executives explain their recent merger or layoff of hundreds of employees. I mean, the word is now all over the place. It didn't used to be that out front. So I didn't know, I mean, but it was so obvious. It was out there. Yes, men used it all the time. The difference is women didn't know it. Women still don't know it.
What don't they know? What should they know?
They don't know what a team is.
They don't know how to be a team member?
That's right. In fact, in the last 2 years, I have seen, because now with the Reagan administration, believe me, the pressure on affirmative action, they're literally fighting to dismantle the programs, but on equal employment is very definitely off. So many women are now being let go from very good jobs. I mean, jobs that were good, you know, executive jobs they had actually moved up into. And the most common reason given is that they are not team players. That'll be on the performance review. It's probably the most common phrase about women on any performance evaluation. Then they drag out 3 or 4 of these in a row and say, see, you're the obvious one to go when we cut this.
How would you tell somebody to be a team player?
Can
you learn it, or do you have to experience it? Do you have to change your whole childhood? Is it too late for us?
No. really, anybody can learn it because there's a lot of, a lot of guys who never actually were on the football team or the baseball team or anything. They still and all did have a lot more access. But you can learn it by plain watching television. Today it's very simple to watch television and see what a team is. And in our society, you can't escape it. So that you couldn't avoid it if you wanted to. And when women say, I don't know anything about baseball or football, I said, well then, where are you? Watching soap operas? Why aren't you watching the baseball or the football games? Because they are professional teams. And you don't want to learn the rules of the specific game. I mean, it doesn't make any difference what the exact rules are. But what you need to study, and that you can do by observation, and then practice at work, is the relationship between the team members. Now, if a coach, for example, goes out and tells even, a star home run hitter to go out there and bunt this time, and that batter says, what's the matter with him? I mean, bunt, I can hit it right over that fence. I mean, and we're in a great game now. I could make a homer. And ignores the coach, and whether he hits the homer or not, even assuming he hits an absolute homer over the fence, he'll probably be fined and removed from the game because he broke the rule, which is
do what you're told.
Listen to your coach. Right, do what the boss said. Exactly. And women just don't understand that a boss is a coach, or that this is an authority relationship. And the rules are almost unbreakable. I mean, in actual, once you get the order, what you can do, of course, is argue or present your case in private, at various times when meetings are up and discussions. But when the chips are down and you're told, we're not going to go with that. I know you spent 2 years working on it, but I'm sorry, we're just not going to go with that. Just drop it. And they don't drop it. They keep coming back, or they keep complaining, or they tell everybody what an awful boss, or what awful boss's boss, actually, because here you had this fantastic project that took 2 years of work and all these people, and now they just threw it away. Terrible, inefficient management, right? Well, that person is not a team player. And the job she did may have been tremendous. You see, I mean, the technical aspect of it, what was in this project or what she accomplished, could have been superior. Nobody in the field could have done it better. And she'll be let go because she's not a team player.
It's that critical.
It's that important. It really is.
Okay. The other, I think, theme that women often miss is the military theme. Does that go along the same route as the team player idea?
Exactly. It's really the authority relationships. And those are the relationships that women just have no experience with anywhere. Or the only experience they have, I'm sorry, is mom and daddy. But unfortunately, mom and daddy in the workforce doesn't work at all, because your boss is not mama or daddy. And to make that connection, to bring home to the workforce is about the biggest mistake you can make. And this is notwithstanding, there are a bunch of psychologists and all kinds of so-called self-styled experts out there who think and actually lecture and tell people. I mean, this is the kind of stuff women get that is, and they will fall for it. They'll say, oh, the workplace is one big happy family. That's the goal. That's what it's supposed to be. No way. The workforce has nothing to do with your social or family relationships. It is, first of all, the one really impersonal relationship you will ever have. Because it doesn't matter Well, I have to explain, don't say that people get friendly with other people, work better with them, yes. But even so, when it's necessary, let's say, in a recession, for example, or right now with all this reorganization and mergers and all, to cut out people, and they go through and maybe have to cut hundreds of people. You don't survive because you're the best friend of the boss. I mean, you survive because you happen to be doing the job that they have decided to keep. And so friendships, they can ease the way. You certainly, you shouldn't be enemies with anybody you work with. In fact, you should be get along with them very well. But on the other hand, it is not a happy family. Nobody cares. Now really, nobody cares whether your kids are sick. I mean, I know that it's cruel and hard, but they don't care that your kids were sick and you were late 2 hours to an important meeting and it didn't come off, or you didn't get there. It's not an excuse. I mean, you're supposed to be there. Nobody really cares that you need more money because your rent just went up and and gas went up, or you need to buy a new car and all that, and you aren't making enough money. They don't care whether you need more money. You have to be able on salary negotiations to negotiate and say, well, this is what I am selling, my talent, ability, experience, this I can do, this I have done, and this is worth this much. And
it's
therefore,
not need, it's what you've earned or what you're worth,
right,
or how you can sell
yourself.
yourself.
What you're worth, what your services, your talents, your abilities are worth. And it does mean that women have to investigate salaries and money. You see, the argument that women will take, they love to hire women in these jobs because women work so cheap. I hate to say this, but a lot of women do work cheap. They will not even find out what the job is worth. They will be offered a minimal salary and then say, oh, but I can't get a job after graduating from college, and particularly, English or journalism, and therefore this is a way in the door. So they will literally take almost below minimum wage. They think that's getting their foot in the door.
And it's not, it's a mistake.
Oh, it's a big mistake because all they've done is degraded the job.
I see.
Or reduced the salary. I mean, reduce the job level, the salary level on it.
We have some questions from an audience that we have here, and I just want to make sure that you stand so we can hear you.
I'd like to go back to talk about the team playing. You're not suggesting that all women should be yes people, are you? Or that good managers surround themselves with yes women or men all the time?
Being a yes person, in effect, has nothing whatsoever to do with this. Yes, you are a yes person if the boss, the coach, the team leader, your top sergeant gives an order. If you're not a yes person, you got another choice out the door. And you really don't have any argument against that. Because when you work in a job, and I don't care what the job is, it can be very high or very low level, because you're talking about an authority structure. You are basically doing a part of your boss's job. In other words, the only reason that job exists because whoever is the superior in that situation got so busy or overwhelmed, or the tasks, became enlarged. And so now you need assistants to help you do parts of it, or specialists to handle a certain thing. So that's when you hire these people. Very often those jobs exist already. In other words, years ago somebody already figured that one out, and then when it gets bigger, your assistants hire their assistants because the job or the responsibility or whatever is growing, so that essentially whatever job you have, you are always doing a part of the job that the boss delegated to you, that is really part of the boss's job. And therefore, you have really, as a subordinate, no position at all to say, this is how that job could be done. Or I don't want to do what you say because I know how to do it better. If you knew how to do it better, you'd be in the boss's job.
Betty, back in the late 70s, there was a lot of conversation about the need for people who wanted to move in corporations to have mentors. And lately, I've been reading that a mentor can be harmful to your career. Would you like to talk about mentoring and where it fits in the team process?
Love to talk about mentoring because that's one of the things that, you're right, about the late 70s or some mid to late 70s, all of a sudden, you see, women are really suckers. They do not know, so they fall for all of the little buzzwords you can imagine. And mentors is a perfect example of leading women down a, you know, the golden path, the garden path. A mentor, the way it is usually considered or described nowadays, is what? It is a substitute for the father or the husband that you have now pulled away from as an independent. But, oh, you know, Lord knows women can't make it all by themselves, so now what are they told? First thing you have to do in the workforce is get yourself a mentor, who of course were all men at that point, since women just were entering. And that's still true, because, you know, poor women, they can't be trusted to do anything alone. So if there is anything I hate, it is to hear people accept this idea that mentors are A, necessary, B, exist, and C, they don't know what they are. I've read a few books now, women have said, oh, I had a mentor. That's not a mentor, it's your boss. Your boss can never be a mentor. Under no circumstances can your boss be a mentor, in the sense that a few men might say they have a mentor. And some of those men, most men do not have mentors either, but what they do is often, it's part of the old boys network. If you went to Harvard MBA school, right, and then 5 years later or something, when you want a big job, you call up your old classmate who is now vice president of something else and say, hey, Joe, you know about that company, and now they just offered me a job, or your competitor, and, you know, let's have a drink someday soon. And you pick his brain. And if, you know, you get to know people. That's what a real mentor is. It is someone who feeds you information, who tells you whether or not a move you're about to make is good or not, whether, you know, you should take this transfer. It is not your boss, because your boss cannot mentor you. Your boss must have an impersonal relationship with all the other people. But if you don't get along with your boss, forget it. That's rule number one of the game. So you're already out if you don't get along with your boss.
Well, one of the things that you talk about in your book is how women can best exploit their own advantage. Well, you know, it seems like we've got an awful lot of things negative that are going against us. We don't know the rules. We don't have the connections. We're not part of the old boy network. What's going for us that we can use so we can get ahead?
Well, what is going for us finally is ambition. See, finally we have women out there who are determined, who are going to be ambitious, who are looking ahead, you know, looking ahead to a lifetime working history of some kind, and who are beginning to think, well, is this a good place to move, or where do I go next, or should I take advantage of this opportunity? And also the workplace is changing tremendously. What is growing, now that's not always positive, what it is a situation women can exploit, because we have changed from the all-male industrial smokestack economy into a service economy, and women are the experts at service jobs, because those are the ones they've always been in all their lives. Those are the ones they're still in. And the last projection I saw by the BLS, which of course is not exactly a good, you know, doesn't have a good history of good examples, but still, they project that 8 of the 10 fastest growing occupations in the next 10 years, 8 of those will be in female-dominated fields.
But
So women are going to get jobs. However, they must understand that to get to the top of those jobs, they cannot go in and just sit there and work with a green eye shade in their little corner.
they're going to have to get in
They're
the political
gonna have
game.
to get out into the game and know what teamwork is, and know what coaching is, and know what the politics of the situation are.
You write a column monthly for Working Woman and for Mademoiselle. What kinds of letters? How do you pick your letters? How do you know what's hot out there? What's the big issue? What people would be interested in?
Well, actually, a lot of people ask the same questions over and over. So when you're writing a magazine column, you have to say, well, I did something almost the same on that. So I can't redo that. So this question is almost the same. And picking variety controls some of it. Also, different kind of jobs, different occupations, different fields, from sort of entrepreneurs to corporate people to professionals and
What's the major
theatrical
question?
things.
If you had to say, okay, most of my mail is on something, what's it on?
It's on how can I get ahead? How can I move into a managerial job? Because women are now discovering, no matter where they are, that they're in a dead-end job. And the big problem is how to get out of that dead-end job and move into some kind of a position with a more upward mobility to it.
Is there an answer for that?
Yes,
that you
there
give?
certainly is.
What do you usually say?
You have to look for the line jobs, and those are the jobs that are operating jobs. I mean, these are the people who literally make the decisions in the organization, and you run something. Now, if you have been sitting there doing your own little job and your own little specialty, working really hard to prove yourself that you are very good to somebody, you are not eligible for those line jobs, because the one thing about them is they require supervising people. And if you have no experience supervising people, you must start getting that. That's the key thing to really move into management, because management means managing people.
And a way to do that is on the job. I mean, every woman thinks that she has to be trained in something. Are we missing the boat on that?
Yes, because the workforce is not school. It is not college. It is not any kind of formal schooling. It is how you must apply that schooling. And very few, there are some major companies which take a handful of college graduates in a specialty, like right now it's electrical engineering or computer science, and train them. Just put them through 6 to 8 months, or sometimes 3 months training program. And their first job will be, therefore, some low-level supervisory, so-called managerial job. But aside from that, everybody else has to get in and learn it themselves. And very much of how fast you learn, and it takes a few years, because the fellows are just as dumb when they go into the workforce. They make the same mistakes women make, young beginner women. It takes experience. And but the difference that I notice is that the young men, catch on so much faster. They make the mistake once of sassing back their boss, or something, or disagreeing with them or arguing with them. And then they learn, boy, that's not what you do. They make the mistake and they learn from it. But women, you have to understand that this is a requirement and a rule, because they don't learn from it. They just decide that boss is A, incompetent, a creep, discriminates against women, is sexist. And that might be so, but
They can't read between the lines and figure
but what
it
you
out.
have to see is, if you break the rule, that gives a sexist boss
Perfect
Wide
opportunity.
open
We have time for one more question from the audience.
Betty, another topic of the 70s I haven't seen as much of lately, and I think we're glad about that, is women's fear of success. Have you any comment on that?
Well, thank goodness we don't hear too much about it, because that whole study by Martina Horner was later never substantiated. In other words, it belonged to a group of women who had been raised at a particular time and told never, that the social consequences were so bad that they should not strive. I mean, they cut back their own ability to succeed. However, I definitely do see a lot of it in a much more subtle way. We are seeing all that, at least I am seeing everything of the 70s, in fact, everything of the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, still out there, but in a very more subtle form, so that a lot of times you don't recognize it, or even the women themselves don't recognize it. But I can't tell you how many women want options when they're even offered a promotion. Very minimal, I mean, not even a really sensational promotion, who want the option that they can go back to the job they had if it doesn't work out. And you know what? They very often take advantage of that. Now, that's fear of success, right? I mean, it really is. Or it's fear of risk-taking. It's a lot of personal, what it is low self-confidence. And women do have that, and it's absolute crime that we are still, parents of this country, bringing up our daughters to have such terrible self-confidence that they feel like worms and act like it literally when they get out in the workforce against the competition of other, and sometimes other women even, but very self-assured people. That's the part about, I mean, then I go back to education, and I don't think any woman who, whether she has children or not, but certainly if she has children herself, has got to keep an iron fist on that education system, whether it's public or private, because it all starts there in kindergarten, in nursery school. And the women, the mothers allow it.
Well, Betty, I think you'll be glad to know that the Women's Center here at Florida Junior College, one of the major things we do is confidence building, because we feel like there's a tremendous need. So I think you'll be happy to know that Jacksonville's being well served that way. And I'd like to thank you and our audience for being with us here today. I think we've really gotten some pointers from you, and we certainly have a place to look for future guidance. And I think we'll question some wrong advice that we've been getting. So I'd like to thank you, Betty Lehan Harragan, who's an author, lecturer, and very interesting management consultant, for being with us today. And thank you for being with Worth Quoting here at Florida Junior College Women's Center. Thank you so much for being here.